Well, it looks like the website that Glenn Greenwald, Jeremy Scahill, Laura Poitras, etc. have launched is afoot. It's called the Intercept, and they have their first story, and it's about NSA and their drone use and how they target people. Now, it's an amazing story, and I want to tell you all about it. First of all, they've got a drone operator who is a member of JSOC's high-value targeting task force who has actually given them this information. Now, they've combined it with information they have from Edward Snowden and someone else who also used to be a drone operator who has come out publicly against the program. I'll get to him in a little bit, okay? And this guy was in charge of operations that captured or killed terror suspects, so-called terror suspects, in Yemen, Somalia, and Afghanistan, and elsewhere. So this is a great source. We've got quotes from him coming up in a little bit. But first, let me remind you what President Obama said about this drone program. This is when he was talking about it publicly and reassuring people that things would change and that it was already a great program that was very, very careful. Here's what he said. Before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured, the highest standard we can set. Now, we'll find out if that's true in a second. He also said, by narrowly targeting our action against those who want to kill us and not the people they hide among, we are choosing the course of action least likely to result in the loss of innocent life. All right, again, we'll find out if that's true. The least likely to cause innocent life, they're not targeting those people. They're being really careful in how they do the targeting. Interesting. Well, they got a curious way of being careful. First, let me give you some numbers. According to Bureau of Investigative Journalism, which counts in the most conservative way possible, there have been at least 273 civilian deaths in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia alone, okay? And according to a recent study by United States military advisors, okay, it turns out that you are 10 times more likely, unmanned vehicles, I should say, are 10 times more likely to cause civilian casualties than conventional aircraft. So, look, these drones, they're so exact, they're so smart. Actually, no, they're 10 times more likely to cause civilian casualties than when we used to just drop bombs out of planes. Wow, they sound really exact. By the way, that was a U.S. military advisor that did that study. Okay, not some outside group. All right, now, when it comes to this story, they begin to explain some of the issues. First of all, that former drone operator that we mentioned, he said, look, are there civilian casualties? He says about the people they hit, quote, they might have been terrorists or they could have been family members who have nothing to do with the target's activities. You're going to find out why there's so many civilian casualties in a second. It's based on how we do the targeting. Now, understand some of the nicknames for the drones that we use. First of all, the drones themselves are called Predator and Reaper. But that wasn't bad enough, so they decided to give them more nicknames on top. So now one of them is called Lightning, the other one is called Sky Raider. Okay, all right, they're military weapons, I could understand that. Well, here's one of the problems. Sky Raider is colloquially apparently referred to instead as Sky Raper, okay? And why is it called that? Well, the source explains, quote, because it killed a lot of people. Great, I'm so proud that we live in a country where we spread freedom to other people through the Sky Raper. Okay, that's great. And Brandon Bryant is the person who has come out publicly and said that he was uncomfortable with this program. I'm going to get to his powerful quotes at the end about how much this bothered him, what he was doing. He was a former drone sensor operator with the U.S. Air Force. He said when operators were assigned to Sky Raper, it meant that somebody was going to die, okay? Now, of course, what we're told by our government is, don't worry, that somebody's a no-good terrorist and he had it coming. Did we try him? Of course, we can't try him. He's in Somalia, he's in Yemen. Sometimes he's an American citizen. Constitution, you know, who needs it, right? No, just send the Sky Raper and he'll get him. All right, now let's turn back to the new source that's still anonymous. Now, we know Brandon Bryant's name. Now, the new person that's come forward to back him up, to corroborate his story, talked to Glenn and Jeremy Scahill. So now here's the beginning of their article. They say the National Security Agency is using complex analysis of electronic surveillance rather than human intelligence as the primary method to locate targets for lethal drone strikes. So they don't have a guy on the ground saying, hey, here's where terrorist X is going to be or terrorist Y. They're just using signal intelligence. So what kind of surveillance? Well, let's find out more. It says, according to a former drone operator for the military's Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, who also worked with the NSA, the agency often identifies targets based on controversial metadata analysis and cell phone tracking technologies. Now, remember when they collected the metadata here in the US? And they said, don't worry about it. We're not going to use the metadata for anything bad. Except for, of course, now they're not using that here in the US, although they have used it against American citizens. Except if you're abroad, and then we collected your metadata, and based on that, we killed you. Okay, let's find out more. In one tactic, the NSA geolocates the SIM card or handset of a suspected terrorist's mobile phone, enabling the CIA and US military to conduct night raids and drone strikes to kill or capture the individual in possession of the device. It's not that complicated. They figure out where your phone is. Do they know if you're on that phone? Nope. They don't know it. They don't know it. But whoever's holding that phone is going to die. The former JSOC drone operator is adamant that the technology has been responsible for taking out terrorists and networks of people, facilitating improvised explosive device attacks against US forces in Afghanistan. So it has that upside. But he also states that innocent people have absolutely been killed as a result of the NSA's increasing reliance on the surveillance tactic. Wait, I thought President Obama said that we were super careful and we never got the civilians. I remember several times before the program was even exposed, they said not a single civilian had been killed. We already told you at least 237 civilians have been killed, let alone the fact that we're just bombing phones, not human beings. Okay. Now, one problem, Bryant explains, now Bryant, remember, is the guy that came out earlier, Brandon Bryant, is that targets are increasingly aware of the NSA's reliance on geolocating and have moved to thwart the tactic. Some have as many as 16 different SIM cards associated with their identity within the high-value target system. Now, look, this is one set of problems. Apparently, one of the things that they do, which I think is really ridiculous on their part, is that they'll go to a meeting, okay, the guys who we're trying to track, right, at least those are bad guys, and they'll switch SIM cards with everybody so that it's harder to track them. But then the guy who didn't do much maybe got the SIM card of the guy who was the main high-value target we were looking for. Sad day for him. He's now dead, along with whoever he happened to be with, possibly including his family. Okay, now, other problems. That's by the way, the minor problem. Quote, others unaware that their mobile phone is being targeted lend their phone with the SIM card in it to friends, children, spouses, and family members. So they're the guys who know their phone are being tracked, they hand off their phone to others, wrong people gets killed. The bigger problem is the ones that don't know they're being tracked. They're like, oh, son, daughter, aunt, grandma, you want to use the phone? Sure. Oops, you used the phone at the wrong time. Sky Raper was in the air. And you're dead. They say that they're sure who they're killing. This is how they kill the people. They're not sure at all. That's not me saying it. It's former drone operators who did the killing. The reason they're coming forward is they're racked with guilt over it. And they're trying to help Americans, say, you're going in the wrong way. This is not how we're supposed to be conducting ourselves as Americans. This isn't what made the country great. This is why they hate us. Now, more on this story. The NSA often locates drone targets by analyzing the activity of a SIM card rather than the actual content of the calls. Based on his experience, he's come to believe that the drone program amounts to little more than death by unreliable metadata. They're not even, I mean, look, if you thought it was bad before, they're not even listening on the calls. I don't know if it's a matter of laziness or if they can't do it or whatever. They don't even know what the guys are saying. They're like, I don't know, we were tracking that phone. I think it was a bad phone. Who's saying what on the phone? I don't know, just kill it. Whoever's talking on that phone, kill it. Now, more direct quotes from the former drone operator. Once the bomb lands or a night raid happens, you know that the phone is there, but we don't know who's behind it, who's holding it. He continues to say, It's of course assumed that the phone belongs to a human being who's nefarious and considered an unlawful enemy combatant. This is where it gets shady. He continues, people get hung up that there's a targeted list of people. It's really like we're targeting a cell phone. We're not going after people, we're going after their phones, in the hopes that the person on the other end of the missile is the bad guy. Now, at the high level, Obama's saying, we know, we got the right guys, high level of certainty, don't worry about it. The guy who's actually pushing the button says, we don't know at all. We're hoping that it's a bad guy, but we don't know what call he made. We don't know what he said in the call. We don't even know if it's him. It could be somebody else holding the phone. Great. Everything they turned into a kinetic strike or night raid was almost 90% that. You could tell because you'd go back to the mission reports and it will say this mission was triggered by SIGINT, which means it was triggered by a geolocation cell. SIGINT means signal intelligence. So that's the geolocation cells that they're using. So this is not the minority, this is not the exception, this is the rule. 90% of the time, they kill people based on whatever phone they happen to be holding. I don't know how we lost the local populations. I can't quite figure it out. I don't know how we lost our moral authority. I can't quite figure it out. Now imagine if Al-Qaeda was doing that to us. We thought a government official we were targeting was holding the phone. It turns out it was his 4-year-old daughter. Her and her classmates were killed in this drone in that bombing. Oops, who cares? How much would we despise them? How many wars would we start over that? The Washington Post also had a similar story about this. Now, unlike the Intercept, they didn't have a lot of criticism, but fair enough, they had the story about the NSA and how they use it. It turns out the NSA was proud of it. And by the way, some of these stories we get from sources who are bragging about the program, like, aren't us Democrats tough? We can kill people like Republicans can, maybe even more hideous and insidious ways. So in the Washington Post, they said, within the NSA, a motto quickly caught on at a geocell. We track them, you whack them. Okay, very clever. Now back to the former drone operator, he says, when raising objections about intelligence, the most common response I would get was, JSOC wouldn't spend millions and millions of dollars and man hours to go after someone if they weren't certain that they were the right person. There's a saying at NSA, SIGINT never lies. Except, of course, as he explains, it lies all the time. In fact, it's not even a matter of a lie. They tell you that they don't know who they're killing. Look at that justification. Don't worry about it. And by the way, why did he come forward to Greenwald and Scahill? Because he went to his superior officers, he told them. And he said, hey, look, this is not right, right? And here's problem X, Y, and Z with it. They're like, we wouldn't spend millions of dollars to get something wrong. You idiot, we already spent money on it. Shut up and keep killing people. Gee, I wonder why people go to the press instead of just turning themselves over to the American government. I can't believe Edward Snowden left the country. How dare he? He continues, they make rush decisions and are often wrong in their assessments. They jump to conclusions and there's no going back to correct mistakes. Because once you've made a mistake, they're already dead. And what did he say was the overall mantra? Quote, just keep feeding the beast. Well, that is unfortunately the most true thing that any of them have said. And beast indeed. So then we go back to Brandon Bryant and why he left the program. Now remember, he was involved and credited with missions that killed 1,626 people, what we called enemies in action, right? And his conscience couldn't take it anymore. One of the things that he was most particularly worried about was Anwar al-Awlaki, the guy that the president said was a really bad guy and did propaganda. Now, did we check with the court system? He was an American citizen. Did we give him due process? Of course not. We just killed him. We found his cell phone and we murdered him, okay? Now, you can say it's not murder. You can call it an execution. Call it whatever you like. But we didn't give him any due process. The king declaring him an outlaw does not give him due process. We settled that back in the Magna Carta, let alone our United States Constitution, okay? All right, but that's one thing. You know, we also killed his 16-year-old son 2 weeks later, not in the same strike. We killed Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki. He's a 16-year-old. He's also a U.S. citizen. executed by the U.S. government. They have not given us a reason why they executed him. They claim that it was a mistake. Really? Why? Well, how did you make that mistake? Why did you make that mistake? Why did you accidentally, by the way, there was 2 Americans killed in that strike. And there was 4 Americans killed overall and 2 Avlakis, okay? Why did you make a mistake where you accidentally executed a 16-year-old U.S. citizen? Well, that keeps Brandon Bryant up at night. He said, quote, "The kid doesn't seem like someone who would be a suicide bomber or want to die or something like that. He honestly seems like a kid who missed his dad and went there to go see his dad." And that is the story. He was looking for his dad because he'd missed his dad. That's why he was in the country in the first place. Now, he'd already called off that because 2 weeks earlier his dad had been killed by a drone strike. So he's sitting there eating with his cousin, both killed. And this there's no information on, but I'm telling you right now, there's no way that it was a coincidence that they killed him and his 16-year-old son within a 2-week period and went, oh, oops, did we kill all the Avlakis? I have no idea why they did that. And wouldn't it be great if our government in a democracy shared that information with the public as to why they executed that kid? Now, Brandon Bryant says something really powerful. He says, "I was a drone operator for 6 years, active duty for 6 years in the U.S. Air Force, and I was party to the violations of constitutional rights of an American citizen who should have been tried under a jury." And by the way, understand that. No one here is saying that, oh, just let him go, oh, treat him with kids' gloves. We're saying do what the Constitution demands. Give them due process, try them. Look, it doesn't even take that much effort to try them in absentia. We've done that many times before for people who we said were terrorists that were abroad. You could have done this, but they didn't. You know why they don't do it? Because they don't have that much evidence. They don't have it. They just have they can't go to a judge and say, I don't know, there's a cell phone. I don't know what they said on the cell phone. I don't know who holds the cell phone, but can I execute them? They couldn't get the yes answer from that, so they just use the executive branch and they go, hey, Mr. President, we think you should kill him. Oh, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, let's kill him. There's no trial by jury. There's no due process. There's no constitutional rights. Being an American citizen apparently doesn't mean anything anymore. Look at what Brandon says next. He says, and because I violated that constitutional right, I became an enemy of the American people. Man, that's powerful. He's saying, look, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have violated the Constitution like that. I shouldn't have listened to those orders. And I'm telling you now so that we stop giving those orders. Finally, we come back to the man who gave those orders in the first place, President Obama. Now, understand one thing. When he ordered his first drone strike in Yemen, it hit a village where they were positive that they had Al-Qaeda. Turns out they killed 14 women and 21 children. Here's what President Obama said, apparently to his staff, when talking about these drone strikes. Quote, it turns out I'm really good at killing people. He added, didn't know that was going to be a strong suit of mine. Yeah, neither did we. And we're supposed to turn ourselves into Barack Obama if we have information that he's violating the U.S. Constitution, the government is violating it, and they're killing American citizens. By the way, today also announced another American citizen has been put on the kill list. Now, we don't know if he's going to be killed because somebody else might be holding his phone. This is sick. It is un-American. It's one of the worst things we've ever done. And most certainly not the change we thought we were getting.